Hello, I'm doing a movie review, and the movie I want to review is one of my all-time favorite horror films. This is definitely one of my favorite horror films to come out in the 1980s, but this is also one of my favorite horror films of all time, and that movie is Fright Night. Now all this week I have been reviewing movies that are either based on or inspired by the book Dracula by Bram Stoker. Now this movie is definitely not based on the book Dracula by Bram Stoker, but you can tell this movie was definitely inspired by Dracula. Like, you can tell this movie was definitely inspired by some of the older Dracula films, like especially the Hammer Dracula films. Like, you can tell this movie definitely drew a lot of inspiration from some of the Hammer Dracula films. So I decided to review this movie for this week because even though it's not technically a Dracula movie, this movie was still definitely inspired by Dracula. Now, Fright Night is a horror comedy which is written and directed by Tom Holland, who would later go on to direct Child's Play. Now, Fright Night, I first saw this movie when I was like 8 or 9 years old. I first saw it on AMC. AMC used to play this movie a lot, and I first saw this movie like when I was 8 or 9 years old, and I absolutely fell in love with this movie when I first saw it. So this is a movie that I really kind of grew up on because this is one of those horror films that I saw when I first started getting really into horror films. So, for me personally, this is like, this is one of the horror films which really got me into the horror genre, and I just think it's a great movie. Now, the plot of this movie centers around a teenaged boy named Charlie Brewster, who, what happens is he gets these two neighbors who move in next door to him, and what happens is he eventually finds out that his next door neighbor, Jerry Dandridge, is actually a vampire, and he finds out that the guy who moved in with Jerry Dandridge is basically the vampire's human servant. But basically Charlie first finds out that his neighbor Jerry Dandridge is a vampire when he sees a hooker go over to Jerry Dandridge's house, and what happens is Charlie starts spying on Jerry and this hooker through his window, and then he sees fangs come out of Jerry Dandridge's mouth, and that's when he realizes that he's actually a vampire. And the next day he sees on the news that that same hooker that he saw at Jerry Dandridge's house has been found murdered, and basically now Charlie realizes that his next door neighbor is a vampire. But the thing is, it turns out that Jerry Dandridge knows that Charlie knows he's a vampire, so now Charlie fears for his life, and what happens is he tells his girlfriend about this, and he tells his friend about this, and neither one of them will believe him. And what happens is he's so desperate at this point to try to find a way to stop Jerry Dandridge that he actually goes to a TV host. Basically, in the movie, there's this show called Fright Night where they show a lot of these old vampire movies, and what happens is the show is hosted by the actor who played in a lot of these vampire movies named Peter Vincent, who's played by Roddy McDowall. And basically Charlie goes to Peter Vincent to try to get him to help him stop Jerry Dandridge, but of course Peter Vincent thinks he's insane. But I don't want to give too much away, but eventually Peter Vincent does get involved in this story, even though at first he does not believe that Jerry Dandridge is actually a vampire. But basically what happens in the movie is Jerry Dandridge ends up taking Charlie's girlfriend Amy, and and basically now Charlie and Peter Vincent now have to stop Jerry Dandridge. So that's the basic plot line of the movie. And I really did love this movie. Like, I liked how the character of Peter Vincent, that name is a combination of the names Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. Now, what was I gonna say? But yeah, this is a great movie. Now, my personal favorite character in this movie is the character of Evil Ed. He's just a freaking hilarious character, but yeah, there's really not much else I can say about this movie without giving too much away. This is definitely a great movie. Now, the movie had a sequel made to it called Fright Night Part 2, and I saw that movie years ago, but I haven't seen it in a long time, so I forgot, like, so I forgot if it was any good or not, because I haven't seen the movie in years, but but there was a sequel made to this movie, and recently there's been a remake made to this movie. Now, I have not yet seen the remake, and I'm not entirely sure if I really want to. Like, I've heard some people say the remake is good, and I've heard some people say the remake is awful, so, I might give the remake a shot, but yeah, this is definitely a horror classic in my opinion. I highly recommend this movie, especially if you're a fan of some of like the Hammer Dracula films. Like, you can definitely tell this movie drew a lot of inspiration from those films. So yeah, that's my review on Fright Night, and bye.